Welcome to SIGHTLINE Live, the podcast where we explore how live experiences can fuel year-round marketing. I'm your host, Marie-Elaine Lemire. At the center of today's conversation are Gil Forer, former partner at Ernst & Young and founder of ForerSight Advisors, alongside Lina Beaudin, VP Production at C2 Montreal. Together, we'll unpack how trust is built between corporate structure and creative ambition, how innovation realized evolved from concept to experience, and what it takes to push experiential work beyond formats and into real impact. From collaboration dynamics to creative tension, and from impact beyond metrics to shared learnings, this conversation sits at the intersection of brand, experience, and partnership. Lina and Gil, welcome to SIGHTLINE Live. I want to ask you both, Lina and Gil, can you walk us through the journey of the EY and C2 partnerships? And was there a defining moment when you realized this collaboration could produce something truly distinct?
So I was actually introduced to C2 by a friend of a friend who knew me and knew that, I'm trying to do something different. And introduced me to C2. I think we had one phone call, but then I went to Montreal and met the senior team, and there was an immediate click and understanding each other. And I also look at what they did in terms of from C2 Montreal perspective. I know the relationship with Cirque du Soleil, for example, and it was intriguing. And I said, let's do it.
Amazing. Do you remember kind of the moment, or if there's any activation or specific project that they did that caught your attention and made you feel like this was going to be a trustworthy relationship?
I think, trust is being built usually over time. It's not instant. The relationship, as I said, there was an immediate click between me and I would say the team, the producer, the vice chair, the CEO at that time. I saw videos of what they did in C2 Montreal, and I was intrigued by their capabilities of thinking about senses and how to trigger and activate the senses of the human being, of the participant. And so, we tried. But I would say that the main moment when there was a complete trust, and maybe when the trust was sealed in a way, because there was trust before, was before the second event that we did together. So that was about 2017. In preparation to this event, which was supposed to be at the East Bay, across the bay from San Francisco, we had everything set. We had the venue, everything, contract signed, all the plans were done. We're basically ready to do construction. And then I think I was driving in Arizona and got a phone call from the vice chair of C2 at that time, and he said, "We have a problem because the event presented to us a fake permit, and they don't have permit to do events." And that was about 3 to 4 weeks before the event was supposed to be. That means invitations are out, all the plans are done, all the materials are being ordered. And C2 switched it, and we moved to a different venue, and we did something extremely creative. We built 2 circus tents, and that's where we did the event. In a very different venue. And so when you get to the moment of truth, a moment that matters, when you have a full partnership with your production company and event company, that's at that moment the trust is completely sealed. And we all knew that there's no other option, right? There's no option to say, oh, sorry about that, we'll do an event, we're postponing the event. Actually, nobody knew about it except me, my partner who did events with me, Amanda, and probably my boss. But except for this, nobody knew about it.
I mean, when you can rely on a partner, like a partner and not a supplier, I think that's where the relationship is stronger. Lina, from your perspective, and Gil, I want to come back to that similar question for you as well. But Lina, when you first began working with EY, how did you feel about the challenge of building something creative for such a corporate brand?
Well, if anybody knows me, I was excited. That's my wheelhouse. So for me to do what it is I do, which is go big and be creative and think outside of the box, and then have a corporate brand who's like, hey, this is what we want. It's a bit of a match made, really, because I love the challenge. And that's what gets me up in the morning, to be honest. That's, things that are basic. I've been in the business for a long time. So really what gets me going is a challenge. Something completely different that's never been done. Sign me up. I'm there. The first one to be like, okay, what are we doing? Great. So I was excited.
Did you have a specific approach initially when you started working on that?
I think the first approach, because I came in post-COVID, that's when we first met and I came in on the project. My first approach was to learn, to get to know Gil, get to know Amanda, understand the brand, understand who EY was, what Innovation realized. I understood what it was, but you don't ever really understand a project from the outside. It's when you start getting in. So I think that, for the first month, I felt I was an observer, a listener, a questioner, trying to understand. And then after that, when I started to really understand where it was going, what the expectations were, the vision was, I think then it was just deepening that relationship with Gil and really showing up to co-create together and figure out how we would bring this vision to life.
And we will talk about Innovation Realize a little later, but Gil, from your perspective, how do you define the brand beyond the services and the business outcome? Because EY operates in such a anchored in trust and rigor and structured world. So how do you personally define the brand beyond services and business outcomes?
Well, the brand of EY is already very strong in terms of trust. This is the heritage of EY. But if you look at the brand message of shape the future with confidence, that means quite a lot. Especially in a world that is a lot of complexity and uncertainty. We want to convey that the power to shape the future is the confidence that you have, is the confidence to take action. It's actually also the confidence to understand how you embrace uncertainty. It's the confidence to say, I don't know. It's the confidence to learn. It's the message of hope that we can shape the future. And when you look at what I did with Innovation Realized is trying to bring that brand into what the event's supposed to be.
And do you feel there's a risk in preserving credibility and also pushing toward a more creative expression of EY?
Look, first of all, there's always risk. Risk is never zero, right? But my job is to make sure that the risk is close to zero as possible. But also taking risk is part of the job. And so we always take risk. And if you don't want to take risk, don't do events.
And do you have to sell those risks internally, or all the creative ideas, did you feel like you had to sell that internally to your team?
Well, look, I think I was blessed or being lucky that my boss at that time, and then her successor, gave me the leeway to do what I think is right to do, and the full trust in me. And yes, my boss at that time, when we did the first one, she took risk because she put the full trust in me that I know what I'm doing and that I can do something of high quality. But she didn't know. She had a trust, right? And so she took a certain risk, of course. And obviously, over the years, the risk was getting lower and lower. But there's always risk. You never know about the unknown.
But the risk is what brings us further and gets people excited, right?
Absolutely. It gets me excited.
Lina, yes. Lina, from the C2 perspective, since C2 is a studio, you're working with many different customers. How do you approach creative work for a brand with deep heritage and structure without diluting its core identity when proposing a concept?
Yeah, well, I think you start by understanding what is sacred in that brand. What is the quote unquote heritage? Every brand is going to have some sort of heritage, right? But whether that's a value proposition, their perspective, a special relationship, or a type of relationship they have with their clients, when you understand that and you really understand who they are, what they represent, how they want to be seen in the world, then it's easier to start understanding, like, okay, what do we have to ensure shines? What do we keep as part of that brand in the event? And what are things that are habits but not deal breakers, right? I think sometimes a lot of brands, especially as it comes to experience an event, they'll show up a certain way with their brand, not because that's part of their brand identity per se, but because they always showed up like that. That's how they knew to make the brand shine and come alive. So I think that when you understand what's really important, what are the key non-negotiables in the brand and how it's to be represented, now you can start playing with that and you can show up a different way. So I think, it's understanding what's essential and then learning how you can work with the essential and restructure it in a different way. Does that make sense?
And again, yeah, absolutely. And again, because you're an agency and you work with so many different partners, how do you ensure that when you work with a new customer or on a new project, you're not bringing back ideas that you already produced with another customer? How do you ensure that you stay creative and bring always new ideas on the table?
It's a great question. I would say I wish that was our problem, that we don't like to recycle ideas in general. We at C2, we hate recycling ideas. And sometimes there's an efficiency in recycling ideas, right? When you're an agency pitching to all these different clients, but we like to reinvent, recreate, revisit, and start from scratch kind of all the time. So it's finding that happy medium. I think there's a balance there. You want to show up for clients differently, but then sometimes there is a little bit of a recipe or a structure to keep that maybe you created for another event. And for us, we're finding that flow more now, but we've always been a reinvent, redo, it's something new, because that's also what excites us, right? As opposed to rinse and repeat. So it's not really how do we do it? It comes naturally, is what I hate to say, but it does come naturally for us. And the happy medium is finding areas where we could be a little bit more on the recycling side and find a balance there. But we're at the opposite extreme most of the time, where we just like to reinvent.
But in experiential and marketing, there are trends that we see and people get very excited about them because they seem to be working. Do you feel it's dangerous sometimes to fall in those trends and
get on the bandwagon?
Yeah.
I mean, is it dangerous? I think it's depends what you're trying to achieve. Do you want to stand out, or do you want to just show up the way everybody else is showing up? Right? So if you want to stand out, then sure, the trend is to be doing something experiential. But to do something that was already done with a new wrapper on it, now are you standing out in any way, or are you just showing up? And that's okay. If you just want to show up, by all means, follow the trends and put a different wrapper on it. But if you want to stand out, that's, I think, where we should have a conversation.
Standing out versus showing up. That's a great insight to keep in mind. I want to talk about Innovation Realized. Gil, can you talk to us a little bit about that event that EY produced, organized, and what was the goal of it?
So first, Innovation Realized was an annual gathering of our very top clients from around the world, usually at a C level or C minus, I would say -1 level. The idea is that if we want to focus on our very top clients, it will make sense to bring them on an annual level, in one place. Obviously not everybody because it's impossible, but a good number of them. And so Innovation Realized started with this objective. I think the uniqueness of Innovation Realized is that we created 5 core values for this event to be, in addition to the business objectives. And so the business objectives are, always good to have, but we always focused on the value of what are the core values of this event. And there were about, we provide peer-to-peer platform for conversations and for the knowledge sharing. And why is that? Because again, the world is changing constantly. And we know when you're a leader, it's sometimes a very lonely job. And so the knowledge sharing is extremely important, to knowledge share with your peers and peers from similar functions or similar titles to you and from other industries. The other value was to create an experience-based immersive design platform that will empower the participants to think differently, to collaborate with each other, and to think in a creative way. Why? Because when you sit at the office or if you sit in a typical meeting room in a hotel, you just have another meeting. You are not getting your creative juices going. We wanted to create something memorable, something that is distinctive. So a value of being distinctive, memorable, exceptional, and really to cater to the experience of the participant. The next one was about outcomes, is to ensure that the outcomes are not just for EY, but they are meaningful outcomes for the participants. Otherwise, they would not come again, right? They're not coming just because of me. They're coming if they drive meaningful outcomes out of here. Because we ask them a lot, right? We ask them to come for 2 days, including travel. That's almost a week, especially if you come from the other side of the globe. And the last one was to do something that is human-centered. And I talked before about looking at the senses and understanding how the brain works and how we can activate the brain to think differently, to be creative. So these were the core values. And then obviously came kind of the objectives in terms of the business, but again, both for the participants as well as for EY.
So it's interesting when you mentioned you really built that event based on the core values versus thinking about the business outcome first. Can you talk more about that? Why did you choose why did you choose to focus more on the values, and what did it deliver differently than if you were focusing on the business outcome first?
So the values I knew, and I think I've been right about this, is that if I deliver on the values that are helping the participants in various ways, A, in terms of the overall experience, B, in terms of having a different type of thinking, in enabling them to have meaningful conversations with their peers, in having meaningful outcomes of the event. If I focus on the participants, the gain for EY is already there, right? So if the participants are happy and see meaningful outcomes from that, EY will benefit automatically. And obviously then the business objectives come on top of that. And we didn't forget about the business objectives, but they go hand to hand with putting the participant first.
That's really a key, I think, as you mentioned. If you focus on the participants and you make them happy, you'll get the business outcome you're looking for. But Lina, from your perspective and from a creative and production standpoint, how do you take a thematic platform like innovation or specific values and turn it into an immersive experience?
I guess, good question. So I would say that we start with space, right? We start by asking ourselves like, okay, something like innovation. What does that feel like? How does that come to life? How do we demonstrate that? How does the space reflect that versus how do we communicate that? How do we talk about that? It's a show versus tell, right? And I think from a production standpoint, what that also means is that, when you talk about immersion, what does immersion even mean, right? So immersion isn't about density. It's about how something lands, how something feels, how it hits the senses. It's also about timing, strategy. There's a time and place for everything, right? And so when you're in an immersive experience or an immersive summit, you don't want it to be on all the time, right? You have to think about all the different needs that people have, especially in these environments. And so, it's a lot of thought around spatial design, touch points, pacing of where those touch points are, when they come in, how they come in. And again, the process is kind of like, I think one of the most important parts of the process, I should say, is also in all of this, how do you find the human elements and the human touch points within this so that it doesn't just feel like, oh, I'm in this really cool, trippy, immersive space, but I'm connecting and I'm feeling. And to Gil's point, there's a lot to achieve within this forum. And so as you're creating this immersive experience, you got to keep those things at the forefront and the human needs as well. So you kind of build backwards, but you always start with space. And there is like, Gil could tell you that one of the most important things in any big immersive, even event, is the space you choose. If you choose a space arbitrarily, it's like a square peg in a round hole sometimes. You really got to be thoughtful about the space, especially for an event like this one. A lot of implications. Yeah.
And also you're talking about the importance of what people feel. So more on the emotional side. And this is a topic that we hear a lot in experiential right now, that make them feel something. So I want to ask you both, how do you measure the success of an event when it's about emotion and so it's something so personal for each attendee? Do you have surveys? Like, how did you know that Innovation Realized was successful? I'll start with you, Gil.
So let me maybe start with a bit of history. So I'm a graduate of the hotel industry. So in my early career, I was in the hotel industry. So concepts like service or exceptional service, moments that matter, putting the customer first are part of my DNA. And that's what I try to bring to the event as well. So it's not a cookie cutter event. It's not about cutting corners. It's really about putting the participant or the guest first. And the measurement is not easy, right? Because obviously the normal measures, right? How many repeat guests you have, what's the revenue that we generated, will EY do it again? And those were, you can basically tick the boxes, right? But for me, a lot, it's about the moments that matter, both for the total audience as a one unit, but also for the moments that matter for the individual. And we created together so many moments that matter for individuals, even about celebrating a birthday of an individual, not in the open space, but we're creating for her in that example, we created for her a mini birthday celebration in one corner as a surprise. She'll never forget it. And we created many of those. And when we say a moment that matter for the whole audience, we built a bakery at the event. Every year we built a bakery. People still tell me that they come for the event because of the baked goods and the smell. And so it maybe sound crazy, and it is an investment, but those small things what make the event very different and what pushing the envelope in terms of being memorable, distinctive, a true experience, and so on. And so when you talk about measurement, obviously there are the usual measurements, but then there are a lot of testimonials. And you look at the testimonials from the clients, and you look at the testimonials from the EY partners who are at the event with their clients, what they actually achieved in the 48 hours of the event. Sometimes it's what they achieved in 48 hours they were unable to achieve in a full year because it's an intimate time with the client. And so the testimonials, the video moments, the desire to do it again, people continue to talk about it, etc. Those types of measurements that are more on the soft way versus the hard measurements are not less important.
I feel like with the rise of AI, we're going to measuring like emotions and behavior is going to become more and more accessible. Lina, is this something that you're kind of integrating more in the experience you're building? Do you see it requested by more customers? Like, is it a trend?
I wouldn't say it's a trend yet. I think that it has the conversations are trending about it, but what we're seeing is it's a budget thing at the end of the day. In order to capture, and let's just be really clear, because I'm really into KPIs and I'm really into the capturing the data post-event and how we can successfully do that. There are so many ways, and there's no one thing out there that truly gives you the full picture. So AI, yes, it does exist in different forms. We see people starting to talk about it more. We've had a few conversations about it with various clients. But a lot of the time, the clients are hesitant because they didn't budget for that. They didn't plan for what it takes beyond a post-event survey and maybe some light tracking within the event. They forget to plan for that. And depending on what service you're using, the price tags vary, right? So I think that you will see a trend. I think that there's some work that needs to be done around it being affordable and integrated effectively. Because again, take an event like Innovation Realize and the scale of that to truly measure everything. I think the tool that we used was great because and I don't even recall, I think we gave it to everybody, right? Everybody had a bracelet. Yeah. So when you can get something like that on everybody in your event, it's a really great way to track measurement. It's different when you get 1,000 people versus 350, or, scale is everything.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And also, budget is always such an important question. I want to ask you both, and I see the time running so fast, and we have like 40 million questions remaining. We could do it a few other episodes, I feel like. But I want to ask you both, what would not exist or not happen without this collaboration on the EY side and on the C2 side?
Look, it's a very hypothetical question, which is, very difficult to answer. Who knows? I can't answer. I can't answer it truly. I would only say is that that we definitely benefited from this collaboration between EY and C2. We did something that is unique, very difficult to repeat it, but that's not the objective, right? The objective is not to repeat it; is to change it from year to year, and to do something different every time, with the same concept, of course, and the same values and the same business objectives. But I don't think it's not copy and paste. It's about being innovative.
And Lina?
I echo the same thing that Gil said, which is such a bit of a cop-out answer, but also I would say that, this relationship between me and Gil wouldn't have happened, who I've learned a lot from and had a lot of fun working with. But I would say that, yeah, I think C2 has learned and gained a lot in the relationship and working with EY. There's been opportunities that we're still working on projects together. I think EY pushes us, really pushes us to show up at our best creative selves, and keeps us on our toes. And I think they're always wanting something innovative and new and different, and that's good for any creative studio and agency. And likewise, I think that we've brought a lot of creative flair and great energy to the partnership as well. To say that they wouldn't get that somewhere else, I'd like to think that, we do experiential really, really well. That is our DNA. So I don't know that Gil would have had as much fun with anybody else.
That's a perfect answer. But if you had one advice to give to marketers going through RFP processes and trying to find a partner, what is the most crucial element to ensure a partnership can thrive? I want to ask that to both of you.
I think you need to have the trust, and the trust that it's more than a client-vendor relationship. It's a trust of a partnership. It's a trust that you can go sleep well at night. It's a trust that they want the best for you, and it's not just the best for them. It's not about cutting corners. It's about a joint investment.
I would say, again, so it comes back to transactional. Don't treat it like a transaction, because it's more than a transaction. You are putting out a request to go into the trenches with another team, because it really is kind of like that. You're going out, you're producing something large. If you want just a supplier, sure, treat it like a transaction. But if you want people who are going to show up and truly be your partner, then you have to treat the RFP process as that. Most often we get these RFPs that people want us to fill out these really long Excel documents filled with questions. They want to give you a very short meeting to ask any questions you might have. And there's seldom this human interaction of like, who is this person in front of me that I am talking to? And can we vibe? Can we work together? Because we're going to go and do a very big, very important project together. And I want to know that you're there with me as a partner, and not just a transaction. And I think that it goes both ways. I think often studios, I could say, we feel that a lot of these RFPs are just so transactional, and that people aren't looking for partners, really. They're looking for a supplier.
I can't agree more. It shouldn't be treated as a transaction. And as Gil said, it should be a joint investment. So many great insights today, Lina and Gil. Before we wrap up, I want to do a quick lightning round. So no overthinking. I'm going to ask you questions and you answer the first things that comes to your mind. So Lina, I'm starting with you. Social media buzz or live reactions?
Live reactions.
Gil, first impression or last impression?
Both. You need to have both. The last impression is what people will take away. And the first impression, if you don't have it, the day is not there.
First impression sets the tone, I would say.
So true. Lina, if an activation could only hit one sense, which one would it be?
Sight. The heart was the first thing that came to mind. And then I was like, ooh, that's not a sense. And then I was like, oh, sight.
That's interesting. I love that. Gil, event trend you hope disappears tomorrow?
The cookie cutters.
Lina, if you had to describe your working relationship in a movie title, what would it be? And I'm going to ask that to Gil as well.
Thelma and Louise. But I don't really, movie titles. Oh man. That's the worst question to ask me, to be honest, because I can't remember movie titles to save my life sometimes. But Thelma and Louise is the first thing that came to mind, just because of, two people working closely together, partners in crime.
Gil, what would you respond to that?
I don't know. You'll ask me a different question.
Okay, a song that reminds you of your relationship?
We Are the Champions.
Yeah. Oh, that's powerful. Love that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lina and Gil, for joining SIGHTLINE Live. It was such a pleasure to have you today, and we could continue this conversation over so many other episodes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.